This look combines an oversized Zara sweater with a pair of Mickle shorts that have a Nautic-inspired drawstring at their base. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here on yet another adventure. Today's video will be about my home country, Canada. Specifically, my home province, Quebec. So for those of you who are probably from other parts of the world, Quebec is a French-speaking part of Canada, which means that government, communications, and the majority of the people speak French. But you would also find a lot of French on menus, on street signs, etc. The school system is somewhat similar to the school system in France, and there's obviously a genetic and cultural tie with France itself. Quebec has some of the coldest winters in Canada. On many occasions, it's actually colder than the Arctic Circle in cities in Quebec. Personally, I lived in Montreal, which is basically an island within the province itself. It boasts one of the most extensive sets of nightlife in all of North America, and the legal drinking age is 18 years old for you Americans. Because of the extensive winter season, often starting in October with snow, the city of Montreal and the province of Quebec really come alive in winter with a variety of activities to do outside, including the most commonly played sport, hockey, which is played on the streets throughout the year, but becomes even more popular when the lakes and water bodies in the province freeze over. Our provincial hockey team is the Habs. A lot of people say that that is a shortening of the full title, Les Habitants Canadiens. If you speak French, that means the Canadian dwellers or the Canadian residents, people who live in Canada. It was the first province to actually be settled, and a lot of people's eyes. The true Canada, it has a very similar culture to continental Europe, not only France, but a lot of the Nordic countries as well, just owing to the weather. I speak all the time here about going to raves, go out to places such as Metro, New City Gas, even Beach Club, which would typically have a lot of raves. But there's also a very prominent sort of Latin culture, sort of based on the genetic composition of the residents. So I was exposed to a lot of reggaeton in Montreal, which is now one of my favorite genres in addition to EDM. It is the birthplace of Poutine, which combines fries, some sort of meat, typically beef, and gravy, in addition to cheese, which is the Quebec version of cheese. Quebec is very proud of its natural resources. It is primarily a green province that relies on hydroelectric energy based on its vast resources in that area. And it also has significant rural areas in addition to the administrative capital, Quebec City, and sort of the more tourism capital, Montreal, which has a very, very large immigrant population and is extremely multicultural when compared to the administrative capital, where you do find more persons of Quebecois origin, meaning persons who were descendants from the original French settlers, and a very different sort of vibe. Montreal is almost like New York, but in French, I would say. not necessarily quite the scale of tall buildings, etc. They really went out of their way to preserve some of the colonial facades, which are very prevalent in Old Port, to give an example. But you do see it sort of scattered throughout the city, where different modern institutions basically made their homes in these colonial style buildings, but definitely made an attempt to preserve the historic facades. I would definitely say that my favorite memories of Quebec as a 20-something all revolve around going out. It used to be, and probably still is, one of the safest cities. And so I used to walk to the club and literally walk back without worrying for my safety. And I would say people are quite friendly. Not so friendly as Brazil, but more friendly than more continental Europeans, like for example the Brits. People are very opening and welcoming to all lifestyles as long as persons keep to themselves. A lot of you probably heard of Montreal or Quebec when Kylie Jenner had her 19th, I believe, birthday party at Beach Club. I had tickets to that and I had a really hard time arranging a lift and I did not go. But in my experience, the party scene, especially the clubbing scene, is a world-class experience. In terms of fashion, people are very continental. There's a lot of Scandinavian minimalism because of the extensive winter, so people wear a lot of black, a lot of grey, very muted colors. Even in summer, where the preferred almost go-to color is actually white, as opposed to some of the brighter pinks and yellows and greens that I personally saw a lot of in England compared to Montreal. Montreal has a very small community, small island kind of vibe, perhaps because it is literally an island, but I genuinely felt like Montrealers were very, interested in the city, interested in life in the city, and there was sort of a niche for everybody. It definitely has its own style. I worked at SSENSE. I'm sure a lot of you probably heard of it. It's a luxury reseller. Yeah, I actually used to work there and it was very interesting to learn sort of the inner workings of bigger brands like Versace or Versace, Gucci, all of these different brands that I was exposed to at my time at SSENSE. I think there's something classy about sort of a knit sweater on top of a pair of shorts when it comes to spring or summer. I definitely went for a very Nordic sort of vibe with this outfit. I will definitely be doing individual story times about Canada. I spent so long there that it's actually really difficult to just make a short video explaining, sort of everything about it. But I did do my best to actually give you guys the highlights. But do stay tuned to hear the different story times of the actual adventures that I had when I was in Montreal, to be precise, but Canada as a whole. So that'll be it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.